Hey, it's Pastor Mike Conklin here at Zion Good News Lutheran Church on Fat Tuesday, February 17th. Tomorrow's Ash Wednesday, so today is the time to get your punchkis and your king cakes and your beads and get all your last sinning in for before the season of Lent begins tomorrow. So it is. This Sunday, the first Sunday of Lent, and so we're going to take a look at the text for this Sunday. Did I say I was at Zion Good News Lutheran Church in beautiful downtown Sandusky yet? I don't think I said that. So, but as you can see with my library in the background, that's where I'm at. But we're going to look at the traditional text for this year in terms of the first Sunday of Lent, or in Lent. And we have a reading from Genesis and a reading from Romans. It seems to me that one of the traditions in the Lutheran Church has always been to sing Mighty Fortress on the first Sunday of Lent. I have to look and see if we did that or not this year. So I think we did, but maybe not. I haven't looked at the song. So anyway, Genesis 2:15 through 17, and 3:1 through 7. So there's this big break between there. And what's in the break between those two passages in Genesis is the creation of woman in the second story of creation. Yes, there are two stories of creation in Genesis. This, what we're hearing, is the second story. Why are there two creation stories? Well, one is a southern tradition, one is a northern tradition. I believe this one is the second tradition is the north. I don't want to steer you wrong. But the thing about the difference, one of the differences between the two creation stories is, in the first story, woman and man are created at the same time. God creates them, and they are created at the same time. In the second story, what we have here is woman is created from a rib of the man. So there is some idea or male-female dynamics going on here, where there seems to be a subservience to the woman. For instance, where the man says, where God says to the man and puts him in the garden to till it. So that seems to be man's work. Well, we know that's not necessarily man's work too, because the women would actually be out in the fields doing the work too. But tilling it would be more masculine. And then later, when we have the temptations of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, we have a more inclusive understanding of man and woman. Now, the words in the second one are for man are Adam, or Adama. Adama means red clay. So that's how man and woman were created, out of the clay, out of the dust of the earth. That's why we say we are dust, and to dust we shall return. The idea that the woman is created from the rib has often been problematic for people because it talks about the subservience of the woman, but it is not. That's not the case, because when we get to the point where they are eating of the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, it says that the woman did it first and gave some to her husband who was with her. When we say who was with her in the Hebrew, we call that the mem inclusive. The mem inclusive, it's a prefix that goes on to the word who was with her. That means not only was he with her in proximity, he was with her in mind, in spirit. In other words, he was in agreement with her that they should eat of this fruit. And the man, in the Romans text, basically, it talks about Adam, not so much Eve, because of the patriarchal exclusiveness of the times. And again, back in Genesis, that would have been a very patriarchal society. Patriarchal meaning male-dominated society. There's a number of things in this text that we need to kind of bring up. When God tells Adam in the beginning not to eat of the tree of good and evil, for on that day you shall die. Well, he doesn't die that day, but he's gonna die. But the serpent, who is more crafty than any other wild creature, which so many times we just refer to the serpent as Satan. It doesn't say Satan, it just says the serpent, who was more crafty than any wild creature. It doesn't say that it was Satan or the devil, although in the New Testament, I believe it's Paul who sort of makes that, or is it Peter? I can't remember which one. They make this inference that the serpent was the devil. But not in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, this is just a serpent is more crafty than any other wild creature. It's not identified as Satan, and Satan would be the Hebrew word for adversary, and it sounds like an adversarial relationship, but it's not. The serpent is not identified as such. So, when the serpent says to Eve, what did God say? And Eve says, you shall not eat of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. I think that's very significant, because that's not what God said. God said, just don't eat of the tree. He didn't say anything about touching it. And Eve reads into it even more, which is so typical of human beings, is we have the law and we have to add to it. We have to add our 2 cents. We have to, because it's all about control. We are trying to control the situation. We know better. We know more than God knows. And so not only can we not eat of it, we can't even touch it. And so oftentimes the law is interpreted that way. That we have a law. The laws were originally just there to protect us and to benefit us, and we turn them into weapons because we make them into more than they were intended to be. So I think it's very significant that the woman says that. And again, it's not a dig on the woman, it's just a human being thing, that's what we do. So we have the whole thing about the rib that's left out, and then we jump from verse 17 to 3:1. And the temptation story. We talked about the mem inclusive. The woman was with her. The man was with her. Wasn't like she did it and she went off and go find him. The idea of knowing good and evil, though, that was the point of the tree, was that when you ate of it, you would know the difference between good and evil. So this raises the question. Because she saw it was good for food and a delight to the eye. So, it met a need, but what did sin exist then before they ate of the tree? Because the eating of the tree was disobedience. And so a lot of people read the disobedience into the first sin, that's the first sin. I would say, did sin exist before they ate of the tree? Because what is it when they find themselves, after they've eaten of the fruit, and again, it says fruit, it doesn't say apple or fig or anything. If anything, it was probably a fig, but it doesn't say what kind of fruit. It just says that when they ate it, they saw they were naked. Great. That's the benefit you get from eating of this and the fall and the understanding of sin is you realize, hey, I don't have any clothes on. So that must be bad. So we got to put some fig leaves together. Oh, was it worth it? Probably not. So the idea, though, that does sin exist prior to the eating of the fruit or the fall itself, the disobedience? Of course it did, because they were naked beforehand, and they were probably doing things that they weren't supposed to do beforehand, but they didn't have any knowledge of it. And even though the law says ignorance of the law is no excuse, in this case, they didn't know the law. They didn't know what sin was. And so that's what makes the Garden of Eden such a perfect place, is because we don't know what sin is. So it doesn't affect our relationships with God or each other. As soon as we find out what sin is, we want to be in control. We want to, manipulate people and our relationships with God. So as soon as we have the knowledge of sin, that's when sin reaps its toll on us. Was there sin before the fall? And some people will argue, no, that disobedience was the first sin. No, it's not. Because if you read Romans, it says, for sin was indeed in the world before the law. That we're going to read that in just a minute. So there's the proof in terms of Paul's theology that, yes, sin existed prior to the fall. It's just we didn't know what it was. And so it didn't affect us. As soon as we started to want to be in control, as soon as we wanted to know the difference between good and evil, and when we thought we could control that, that's when we fell. Again, most everything in life comes down to the aspects of control. We don't want God to be in control of our destiny. We want to be in control of our destiny, when that is impossible. We cannot. I mean, sure, we can do certain things in life that change directions here and there, but in the final analysis, we have no control. And you've heard me talk about this before, which to me means if we have free will, we have limited free will. I mean, and I don't even think we have free will, because I think everything we do is a result of other things that are done in our world. It's kind of like physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I brushed my teeth with Colgate because that was what was on sale this week. So is that a free choice? I don't know. But anyway, let's read Genesis 2:15 through 17 and 3:1 through 7. And we're going to read about how God took at the man and put him in the garden to till it, which again we talked about the masculine side of this, to till it and keep it. So we were stewards of the Garden of Eden. So we had some controls that God gave us, and that wasn't good enough. And the Lord commanded the man, "You may eat freely of every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in that day you shall eat it, you shall die." Which isn't true, but eventually death becomes part of the equation here. Now the serpent, not Satan, the serpent was more crafty than any other wild creature that the Lord had made. He said to the woman, "Did God say to you, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden." So first thing is, yeah, we have control. We are free to eat of any tree in the garden. We may eat of any tree in the garden, but God said, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden." New information. "Nor shall you touch it." Okay, now TMI, too much information. He didn't say that. "And you shall die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die, For God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be open. Hey, you'll have more control. You'll know you'll be like God, right? You'll be like God, knowing good and evil. Not necessarily a good thing to know good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, well, that makes sense, and was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her. It's not like Adam's been off tilling the ground while this has all been going on. He's right there. And he is nodding his head. Yeah, we should probably do this, And he ate, and the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. This is the benefit. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. In a little bit, God's going to come walking through the garden and ask, "Where are you?" And they said, "We hid because we were naked." Who told you were naked? So the idea of the Garden of Eden is probably modeled after the gardens of Babylon, which were one of the 7 wonders of the world. And you would walk through the gardens, and it was just awesome, unbelievable gardens with hanging plants and trees, and so you would walk through the garden. And so the idea that God walks through the garden is probably taken from that understanding of the gardens of Babylon, because again, this is part of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, that make up what we call primeval history before history. So it's a story, in other words, about how things came into being, because we're trying to understand, and so we are given these stories, which again relate back to many stories that were told in Babylon, Babylonian stories too. So, second reading is from Romans 5:12 through 19. Just as sin came into the world through one man, and death came through sin, so death spread to all because all have sinned, for sin was indeed in the world before the law. There you go. Was sin around before they ate of the tree? Yes, obviously it was. So, but they didn't know what it was, so they didn't have the knowledge. They didn't know sin existed, and then when they found out sin existed, that's when everything went down the toilet. So, if we lived in innocence, which is what I think the garden originally was, is just innocence, because they probably sinned, but they didn't know what it was, and so it didn't affect relationships with each other. It didn't affect relationships with God, because we didn't know what it did, because we didn't know the law. As soon as we started making the laws and making more laws and expanding upon the laws, that's when we got in trouble. So, this section here in Romans is basically comparing Adam to Jesus. Adam was the precursor of the Jesus. We often talk about the old Adam and the new Adam. The old Adam being the Adam in the garden, the new Adam being Jesus. And both, as it says here, one man's trespass led to condemnation for all. One man's act of righteousness leads to justification for all. So we have Adam's leading to condemnation, Jesus leading to justification and righteousness. It does say here the gift of righteousness, justification through Jesus is not like the effect of one man's sin. For the judgment followed one trespass brought on condemnation, but the gift following many trespasses brings justification. Because if one man's trespass, death reigned through that one, much more surely will those who receive the abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ. So again, old Adam, old Eve, new Eve. We walk in this paradox, we walk in this tension, that we are both the old Adam, the sinful self, and the new Adam, the Christ in me. And so we walk, and this is where it comes back to the whole free will thing. Either I am walking in the old Adam, the way of the old Adam, or I'm walking in the way of the new Adam, Jesus Christ. But there's no in between. Either I'm walking in sin or I'm walking in righteousness. So that's where a lot of times I say that there's no free will, because I'm either walking one way or another. But you say, well, we get to choose which one we want. Well, debatable, because I think sometimes, sin is a disease that we have no control over, and justification is a cure we have no control over, because it's given freely, it's given in grace. What else do I have here? Grace is not like sin. Did sin exist beforehand? Yes. Was it through disobedience that all this took place? Well, Paul seems to think disobedience had a big part of it, but didn't God, why would God tell them not to touch the tree if he put the tree there if they weren't supposed to touch it, or that was not the plan? So, again, we have the plan being played out here. The old Adam, the new Adam, Adam and Jesus, the one who was to come. That says, yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even though over those who did not sin in the likeness of Adam, who is a pattern of the one who is to come. Because Jesus had no sin. In the beginning, Adam had no sin, at least not any knowledge of sin. So I think we have to be careful here, because then we could easily say, well, did Jesus sin, but he had no knowledge of it? No, Jesus had knowledge of sin. Jesus is the reversal of the fall. In other words, the reconciliation. No longer does sin, is the sin the cause. Sin is still the cause of broken relationships. But because of Jesus, we have restoration of we can restore and reconcile our relationships with God and with each other. So I want to be the Christ in me, not the Adam in me. Some days I do better than others on that. So, this is some deep theological stuff here. So, let's read Romans and then we'll do a song. Just as sin came into the world through one man, and death came through sin, and so death spread to all because all have sinned. For sin was indeed in the world before the law, but sin is not reckoned when there is no law. Again, how do we know what sin is if we have no law? Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who did not sin in the likeness of Adam, who is the pattern of the one who is to come. But the free gift is not like the trespass. For if many died through one man's trespass, much more surely have the grace of God and the gift of grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, abounded for many. And the gift is not like the effect of one man's sin. For the judgment followed one trespass, brought condemnation, but the gift following many trespasses brings justification. If because of one man's trespass death reigned through that one, much more surely will those who receive the abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness reign in the life of the one man, Jesus Christ. Therefore, just as one man's trespass led to condemnation for all, so one man's righteousness leads to the justification and life for all. For just as though one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so through one man's obedience many were made righteous. So what do we want to do? We want to walk with Jesus. We want to not walk with in the garden. We want to walk with Jesus, right? Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toils and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who with me my burden shares? None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is o'er, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely o'er to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Lord Jesus Christ, we walk through life with the old Adam looking over our shoulder, but we walk forward with our eyes fixed on you. Bless us in our journey and our walk in life, that we may be your witnesses to a world that is reconciled to God and to each other, that we don't have to live this way. We don't have to be mean and hateful and angry. We don't have to fix our world because you've already fixed it. We just need to live it. And through you we pray. Amen. All right, well, that's it for today. I will see you on Thursday, and we'll be in Lent. So we'll take a look at Psalm 32, one of my favorites. Do not be like the horse or the mule who have no understanding. That's right. In Matthew 4, Jesus being tempted in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. So until we meet again, peace.